The fact of the matter, my friends, is we needed to hear that. We needed to hear that song because it's going to be another monster year. AI is ripping through the labor market, wiping out entire job categories. Layoffs are rising up 80% from last year. Uncertainty is scrambling our financial markets and corporate projections. DEI has become a four-letter word. And workplaces are the new battleground. Last year in Chicago, my friends, I stood on a stage just like this, and I warned you about what SHRM was seeing on the horizon based on our data and our experience. Some of you were a little upset. Yeah, that's an understatement, right? You wanted Johnny, that one who gave the upbeat speeches, right? And admittedly, that speech was a little dark, but it was intentional. I had to prepare you for what is unfolding right now. As we looked at the storm on the horizon, I asked you to be like the buffalo, not to run from the storm, but to run into it and through it, head on with purpose. And that's exactly what SHRM has done over the last year with you. When the executive orders, you know those executive orders, started dropping, seems like every day, 2 or 3 a day, right? We were ready to jump into action. SHRM could have ignored it, but instead, we decided not to fight it. Instead, we brought all of you together. Over 33,000 people joined our first webinar, our webcast, and more people read it. We brought calm, clarity, and solutions, no matter how tense the weather was getting. We show up because we want you to show up. You heard Brian talk about it. We need you. America's CEOs need you to stand up and to show up. I want each of you to imagine getting through the last 5 years without this community. Together with SHRM, you've carried people through grief. You've carried them through chaos. You've carried them through unimaginable change. You've held organizations together in a labor market that keeps shifting right under our feet. 3 years ago, we had 6 million, do you remember this? More open jobs than people looking. Now that gap is less than 100,000. That's called drastic change. And that's how resilience is born. And that's the muscle that I hope all of you are building. Now, what I'd like each of you to do is to look at how you've changed. Are you more skilled, more grounded? Well, I know I am. But the question is, can we get even stronger and better? Still uncomfortable having hard conversations? I get it. Running solo as an solo HR department of one, running on fumes, right? Trying to keep up with policy changes and executive orders. Are you over Washington, D.C.? I know I am. You're not alone. SHRM's mission, our mission is very clear, to constantly be seeing and sensing the world, talking to CEOs, politicos, CHROs, and employees. Think of us like this. Your local weather forecaster, right? They tell you what to expect that week. The global meteorologists, by comparison, they look further out. And they prepare you for weather that will come months from now. You know, they tell us sometimes it's going to be an El Nino summer or whatever. Those are the people that we also act as. SHRM does both, local and global. We're trying to tell you what the future holds for you. Because if we want you to be your most trusted advisor on all things people and work, we can't just track the weather. We have to get you ready to move through it and then rise above it with vision, courage, and clarity. The storms are far from over, my friends, and they're changing. It's a different kind of storm right now. And no, I'm not going to go dark again like I did last year, but I'm also not going to sugarcoat reality. You see, we need to be realists and clearly understand what we're up against if we're going to take positive action. If CEOs like Brian are going to talk positively about HR. HR leaders need new skills, new tools, and new perspectives. And I'm asking you to look up from the storm, to shift your perspective from what is practical to what is possible. You've proved yourselves worthy and strong. You're worthy buffalo. But now I'm going to ask you to fly. Fly like an eagle. You see, the eagle can sense a storm coming way, way from far away. And from a high vantage point, she will wait for the wind to come. And then she sets her wings, my friends, and lets the current sweep her far above the chaos. That's what we have to do, is get above the chaos. The eagle isn't escaping the storm. She's using it to lift herself. Because from up there, the future is more clear, it's less noisy, and a lot less turbulent. So, I've been thinking these days about what I was going to talk to you about. I believe we have three major areas where HR can rise literally above earthly expectations and really make a major difference in how people live, how they work, and how they thrive, and how their children will. Number one, we've got to protect equal opportunity in a difficult climate. We got to do it. Number two, we have to meet the coming crisis of human displacement. And I'm going to talk about that. And number three, we've got to preserve workplaces, right, as civil sanctuaries for people. But I want to make an important point here, because a lot of times we forget this. You know the age-old question, do HR represent management or the employees? I want to make a really important point. What we do will always benefit both employees and the employers. And that's why this job is so hard, right? And this is very intentional. We need to communicate this to employees better. We have to say they don't know why. Well, it's because we're not communicating it well. Often they don't see what their employers are doing for them. It's too often what you're doing to me. Because we haven't told the story well enough. We've got to look at the man and the woman in the mirror and say, what can we do better? HR has to be an interpreter. We can say to our people, for example, you see this new mental health app? We see a $5,000 investment per employee. You see that prescription that you went to Walgreens, CVS, wherever you went to fill? We see $10,000 of GLP-1 drugs covered without question. You see a remote work policy, and you know we've heard about that, my goodness. We see the technology and trust required to build such a work environment. That's how we show people the value of work and what HR does for them and their families. See, work isn't just about productivity for the employer. It's about how HR improves the lives of employees, their children, and the futures of their communities. And that's why SHRM, your SHRM will always stand with both employers and employees. Because when both sides understand each other better, everyone wins. All right, so now to tackle the tough one first. Let's talk about DE&I. I know you thought I wasn't going to say it. Call it something else. Let's talk about it. My fellow HR colleagues, I'm not one that relishes in saying I told you so, but we did. For good or for bad, and we think it's pretty bad, we told you at SHRM25 in Chicago that a Category 5 hurricane was headed your way and its goal was to destroy DE&I. We saw what was coming. Our researchers back at home, you don't realize we have a big staff of psychologists, IO psychologists, analysts, researchers, and they were telling us, Johnny, this is the big one. And so a few weeks after Chicago, if you remember that, that's last June, a few weeks later, and I know this day vividly, it was July 9th, Tuesday, SHRM officially introduced the concept of inclusion and diversity. And literally all hell broke loose, right? The emails, the social media attacks, the print articles, they were all vicious because people did not understand why we would do such a thing. My executive team, we got together, they huddled with our chief brand and marketing officer and said, what happened? We said equity really matters. Where did we go wrong? And that's where you start. You always have to look at the man or the woman in the mirror. My grandmother would always tell me, when you're pointing at somebody else, look at the three other fingers pointing back at you, right? So we started with, what did we do wrong? Our belief was we were simply telling them what's coming. You see, the U.S. Supreme Court, way before President Trump was in office, indicated very strongly where it was headed when it found that affirmative action in higher educational institutions was unconstitutional. They told us that in 2023. And many of us decided, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't apply to HR and it doesn't apply to the workforce. Well, anyone who objectively read that opinion, and you all know I'm a labor and employment lawyer by training, who read it objectively and not just the media about it, knew that equity was at risk, particularly in the employment context. And for those who don't know, let me just tell you why. It's real simple. U.S. employment laws focus on equality, not equity. You can have healthcare equity, you can have education equity, but Title VII simply doesn't provide for that. The agency responsible for enforcing Title VII is called the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. It is not called the Equitable Employment Opportunity Commission. And it wasn't by accident. Words matter. The employment law that's intended to ensure men and women are paid properly is called the Equal Pay Act in the United States, not the Pay Equity Act. We went on to talk about that, but the reality is there was no law that protected us in this way. And some countries, some represented right here in this room today, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, they do have pay equity acts, but not in the United States. We as HR professionals must know the difference between what we want to do and what we are legally allowed to do. Did you hear me? I get quiet then. But we must understand that. Again, some were incensed and angered that SHRM was doing its job, giving you, our members, a heads up of what was to come. We were literally boarding up the house because our job was to protect the profession and to protect our work. We were bringing down the storm shutters, and those out there who are from Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even the Turks and Caicos, I understand, is here today. Hey, how about it? You know what happens when a hurricane is on its way. And here we are. DEI is under siege every day. In fact, it's probably a bigger storm than even I imagined. And HR, all of you, you're caught in the middle, right? Trying to explain exactly how DEI is defined and demonstrated in our organizations. It's become a cyclone of words. But listen, here's the thing. I actually have some muscle memory when it comes to this. You know, I was talking to my daughter the other day, and she was telling me about George Floyd and that when that occurred and how much of a thing. And I said, sweetheart, I'm old enough to remember someone named Rodney King. How about it? We've seen this movie before, right? There's the outrage, and corporations step out and make big statements, and everyone has to give billions of dollars to deal with racial reckoning, and then they don't. The mission of the HR profession has not changed and will not change. You, the people who advocate tirelessly for our workers, have not stopped caring. I get it. And the critical work of providing equal opportunity for all is still desperately needed and legal. So as Emily Dickens, SHRM's chief of staff, said days after the White House issued its first set of executive orders, she said, calm down. This is about the work, not the words. She said, continue doing the work and we're going to be okay. And I'm here to tell you, SHRM is committed to leading the charge, literally rising above the petty discourse, above all of the attacks, and we're going to create lasting change once and for all. This isn't about ideology, it's about impact. It's not about politics, it's about people and performance. Still, we need to change the foundation, the very foundation upon which we build this critical work. The fact that you've been doing it that way for 30 years does not mean that you should do it for another 30 years, potentially not even another 30 days. Think about this. Home builders. I'm from Florida, right? Florida's in the house. Come on, give me some Florida in the house. Okay, thank you. Represent. I live in Virginia, though. Virginia's in the house, right? Okay. But think about home builders. They don't build homes the same way they did in the 1960s. Today, they build for extreme weather, and we have to do the same thing. SHRM has already started it, though. Last fall, we identified an entity then owned by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, and was called CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion. My friends, we took it over. We could have run from it and said, no, no, no. SHRM took it in, and what we did is spent the last year studying its impact and exploring how to take that work further. right? To help employees and employers unlock potential and expand opportunity for all. You see, no one here is running away from anything. This is exactly not the time to give up or to give in. So I'm happy to announce that SHRM will officially relaunch CEO Action later this year, and I promise every one of you will continue to champion strong, inclusive, legal workplaces that work for all. You have my commitment. As our board chair, Betty Thompson, said yesterday in her opening comments, which I love, SHRM is going to show you how to do this work in a legally compliant, workplace unifying, and business accretive way. That's the framing of our work, and we're guaranteed this will work going forward. So, instead of clinging to the old playbook, let's dare to imagine a better way. One that's more inclusive, more effective, and optimized for the future of work. Do that for us. One that unites rather than divides and delivers better, much better outcomes for employees and our organizations. Now, who could disagree with that? You see, together, we're going to rise above this storm. And like the eagle, we'll see clearly and we'll lead wisely. Second topic, another violent storm that's battering our workforces and our organizations. It's called labor displacement. Yeah, you're going to hear that word a lot. People displacement. Human beings losing their jobs and their livelihoods. This isn't just disruption. It's not just transformation. It's displacement. And I've been thinking about this for a while. What will happen to these people? You see, displacement means I'm ready, I'm willing to work, but there's no job for me. And the work I did no longer exists, and I don't have the skills to be hired for something better. And last year, we warned you how fast technology would change work, and that people urgently needed to reskill themselves to keep up. Our job. Well, fast forward to today, we're in crisis mode, right? Absolute crisis. Every time you turn around, someone's going to lose their job because of AI. Technology is replacing humans, and that is a fact. Don't let anyone tell you differently. And it's happening faster than we expected. So put it all together, and we're staring down a paradox, right? People without jobs and jobs without people. And if I visited your city, you may have heard me talk about this because I think we're in a really interesting moment. How many of you seen the movie Hidden Figures? Okay. Clap, I wasn't in it. But let me tell you about Hidden Figures. Hidden Figures, if you haven't seen it, is a story in the South about three or four African-American women, and they were really smart, mathematicians, physicists, highly educated, highly trained women. And in this movie, and at that time, they were called computers. Not human computers. They were called computers because there was no such thing at that time as a machine computer. And they were tasked with putting the first human, the first American, on the moon. And so they were the hidden figures, the people who dealt with racism in the South and sexism and misogyny in the South. And they were literally as smart as anyone there, but weren't given all of the opportunities that you would enjoy today. Well, what was interesting is those women then learned when the mainframe computer was created that they were out of work. We no longer needed computers because we had machine computers, and their jobs were going to go away. And if you watch the movie, it's fascinating. They could have cried and woe is me and let the government help me. Instead, what they said is we've got to retrain. We've got to figure out how to fix the computer, program the computer, burn the damn computer down. I mean, we got to do something because this thing is coming for our jobs. This is our Hidden Figures moment. I want you to just think about where we are right now. This is our Hidden Figures moment. Bill Gates was recently quoted this year as predicting that in the next decade, humans will, hear this, no longer be needed for most things in the world. And he said even doctors and teachers. My gosh, can you think about that? Never in my life would I have imagined a world without doctors and teachers, because we all grew up, be a doctor, a lawyer, teacher, accountant, something. These jobs are going away. And if he's right, we're looking at profound questions like, what happens to the nearly 4 million K-12 teachers in the U.S. right now? And who will help them find purpose in a world that never imagined needing fewer of them? Now multiply that across industries and ask yourself, who will be responsible for such massive reinvention? across so many professions and geographies. You all, us. It's time for us to roll up our sleeves. HR must be the architects of how AI is introduced, explained, and embraced. And that's why we launched, back in 2024, speaking about getting ahead of this stuff, we launched something called the AI plus HI project. And the idea was artificial intelligence plus human intelligence, that's the HI, will equal the new ROI. And business leaders loved it. This doesn't have to be a zero-sum game. We can win this. HI means human intelligence, and that will forever, forever be the most critical element. It means aligning tech with values, anticipating impact, and leading with empathy, something these computers simply can't do. But I want you to be clear. Reskilling alone won't save us from the displacement. Remember when all of us thought back in West Virginia that you could turn coal miners into coders? How dumb was that? I mean, we really thought we could do it. And people worked hard, they retrained, but they still couldn't find jobs because there was no plan to connect that training to real economic opportunity. HR has to lead differently this time. And we need to reskill at scale, partnering with educators, with policymakers, employers to make lifelong learning a real thing. You see, we've talked about it forever, but now all of us are going to have to do it. Because if we don't help people shift, we're not just losing jobs, we're losing livelihoods. And that's a failure as a society we can't afford. But I'm going to get a little deep for just a minute. Displacement from technology is one thing, but I want you to layer on top of that we have what we're calling a young people workforce problem. Number one, fewer people, young people, are working. Bizarre, right? The labor force participation rate for young people 18 to 24, 16 to 24, will fall to less than 50% in 2030. Now, all of you have to be asking, what are they doing? Because at my house, you got to leave at 18. I don't know what you're going to do after that. Don't figure out how your bills are going to be paid, but you'll figure it out. That's down almost 10% since 2020, and it's continuing a long sort of term downward trend. The second thing that we know, and Dr. Alex Alonso here, who runs our business and analytics group, young people are less prepared for work. And I think you all know that, right? 38%, nearly 40% of employers say they avoid hiring recent college graduates in favor of older employees. Who'd have thought? And 58%, nearly 60% say recent college graduates are unprepared for the workforce. Now think about that. You've spent $200,000 of your parents' money and you are unprepared to go to work? That's some real bad math, very, very bad math. 3/4 of high school graduates say themselves that they don't think they're ready for college or career decisions after graduation. That's insane. 75% after we have funded you for 12 years, in some cases if you have PK 13, 14, 15 years, this is a cluster. Like this can't continue to happen. As of, I tried to be nice, now stop it. Before I went, my son said, please don't curse, Dad. Okay, I'm good. As of early 2025, over 4 million, now this is the thing that's going to strike me, over 4 million Gen Zers were not in education, employment, or training. They call themselves NEETs. The hell is that? Like, what are you doing? COVID, a broken education system, social media isolation, wherever you want to assign the blame, this doesn't work. Our kids are not all right. And they need our help. They really do. We have to help them solve this. We need nothing less than what we're calling a coalition to save the next generation. So stay tuned as your SHRM tackles this, and we're going to reach out to all of you. Now, on the other side of the generational displacement divide are our older workers, people like most of you in this room. Not me. I refuse to go there. Someone asked me how old I was. I said, I don't know. Who counts that? Numbers don't matter. We need older workers to keep working, not just in the roles that they trained for decades ago, but the reality is we need them to take some of the new jobs that our labor market is providing in the moving forward labor market. We literally have got 70-year-olds now walking into your office saying, I got a 10-year career plan. You go work until 80. Interesting. Okay, But guess what? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Americans over 55 will fill nearly half of all new jobs in the next decade. So 55 is the new 35. Look, we're in, right? Claim it. Woo! And this one's going to get you. The fastest growing group in the workforce, believe it or not, people 75 and older. You can't make it up. 75, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I was like, all right, 75 is the new sexy. I'm loving it. I'm for it, you know. But the real question, I'm just so where I could go so many ways, but I'm not. So how do we prevent older workers from being displaced? That's the question. We've talked about lifelong learning, as I mentioned, forever. But here's our opportunity to put that knowledge to work literally. Reskilling can't stop at 50. Let's design training not just for young people, but for older workers. How about that? Flexibility, it's essential. Not everyone wants or needs to work a 40-hour week, especially older workers. So consider flexibility. And don't assume that older means unwilling, because it often just means uninvited. Can I tell you all a funny story? The people don't have a fit because this is not what I'm supposed to talk about. But it came to me while I was sitting here. All right, people in the back, so I'm going to be okay. I won't keep with me all day. But I got to tell you a funny, true story. So I flew in on a red eye from San Francisco or Sacramento, one of those two, but California. All right, California, I got to recognize you all. Thank you all for hosting us. Thank you. Thank you. They had a hell of a party last night, let me tell you. But in any event, so I flew in on the red eye. This is a true story. It still confounds me. So I land, I've been all night, and I get in the car in Uber. The woman shows up, and she's like, oh, how are you, da-da-da-da. And I put my bags in the back of the car. True story. So she's riding down the street, and she says, what do you do? And I said, I'm in HR. I never say I'm from SHRM or anything, or a CEO. That's a little pretentious. So I say, I'm in HR. And she said, oh, well, let me tell you what I'm going through. I lost my job a couple of years ago. You all know, right? No, I don't have a job for you. No, I don't want your resume. No, no, no. I don't even like people. Stop it. AI. Can't come fast enough, damn it. Anyway, so I promise y'all I'm getting off this stage, okay? So the best part of the story, it gets good now. We're riding down the street, so I told her about HR. She's asking me the questions, and then she undoubtedly tells me that she got fired from her last job, and that's why she's driving Uber. So I said, cool, listen, here's some suggestions. I'm sleepy, but okay, I'm going to tell you because I feel kind of obligated. And she said, older workers just do not be given. I've applied 100 times, and I got it. I said, okay. So I sat back in the seat, and I had a moment. You know how you close your eyes hoping that no one talks to you? She was going to keep talking. So I sat in the back seat, closed my eyes. She said, sir, do you mind if I take a call? And I'm like, good, that'll be a reprieve for me, because Baltimore to my house is like an hour. Riding in the car. So all of a sudden, and the phone is in the whole car, not like on her phone. Hello, Mary. Are you good for your interview now? Interview? I am not lying. They start asking questions. She's answering, yes, and I worked here, and I did that, and I work well with people, and da-da-da. And I'm just like, I cannot believe what's going on in here today. I can't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm going to close my eyes, and of course, I'm nosy because I want to know what happened. So the lady said, well, can you tell us what happened at your last job? And she said, oh, yeah, I was fired. And she was honest, and it was I swear to you, she was driving me. She said, I was fired. She looked at me and said, shh. What do I know? I don't even know you, woman. So get me home. And so she said, I was fired because I prompted, if I make this up, God give it. She said, because I had 2 car accidents, I have diabetes, and I had a lapse. I blacked out. Girl. This is the highway. I can't get out, but I feel trapped, right? I'll be damned. So, I mean, this day was going real bad. You had 2 accidents, they fired you? She said, I just blacked out. So both of us are gonna be asleep, baby. Who's gonna drive this car? Okay, fine. So the lady was interviewing her and she said, can you tell me how much you made? So she said, I promise you, purse is on the side. Let me get it. She's driving and she goes into her purse to pull out her payroll receipt. And she looked at me and she said, do you mind? I said, ma'am, let me drive. She said, here it goes. She said, would you mind? So my mind said, hell no. But then my body said she's had 2 accidents. She's gonna do this interview. So I said, yes, y'all, I drove an Uber back to my own house. God is witness, I promise you it happened. That's a true story. Older workers are about it. You hear me? She said, I'm gonna work. Anyway, I'm supposed to get back to my speech, right? Thank you for indulging me, right? Displacement. It's hot up here, I declare. Displacement, seriously, is going to transform how people are connected to work and their income. But to really see it for what it is, we've got to rise above it as a profession. Because down there in the chaos, and there is indeed chaos, it's all movement and people and companies getting caught in the storm. And I promise you, with altitude, we will gain speed and clarity. And so the last thing I want to talk to you about is civility. We've talked about equal opportunity. We've talked about displacement. But there's one more threat to the very future of work in our society, and it's bigger than either of those two. It's us human beings. People are literally at each other's throats. Workplaces are turning into battlegrounds for ideological fights that started somewhere else, literally somewhere else, but ended up at the water cooler, on the Slack thread, at the Zoom calls. You've seen it. And this division isn't just bad for culture, it's bad for business. We have some data at SHRM that says once you are subjected to an uncivil act at work, it takes you about 32, 33 minutes to get it back together. Think about that lost productivity. And we have got to do something about it. And I have an idea. We lost someone recently who understood this concept very deeply. Former Congresswoman Mia Love. Mia Love died at 49 after courageously battling cancer. She was the first Black Republican woman elected to Congress, and she led with courage and compassion. And in her final days, she was writing this book to leave for her children. And she wrote a letter to the country that she loved so dearly. And in it she said, whenever you divide, you diminish. But the goodness and compassion of the American people is a multiplier that simply cannot be measured. And I'm saying to you, my friends, that's the math we need to remember. We have to multiply because goodness and compassion happen at work. Every day, in the open and in the shadows. And if we can model civility at work, it'll spread beyond work into our communities. When you see a kid who's uncivil, they likely have a parent who's been uncivil. And we just sort of have this captive audience for 40 hours a day. We can actually perhaps change that parent. That's why HR says better workplaces will lead to a better world. Together, you and SHRM are building cultures that are going to be rooted in mutual respect, not uniformity, but respect. And that's how we're going to rebuild the civic fabric, right? All of the fabric of our global community. And in this room today, we have over 800, almost 1,000 people from outside of the world. This is a global issue. This is hard human work. And maybe, just maybe, the most important work we do. Now, the other way we at SHRM can rebuild civil cultures is to be your trusted partner always. Because we are living in a time of dangerous misinformation, conspiracies, lies, rumors, propaganda. People are making decisions about other people based on things that frankly aren't true. And this is where we step in. With our research, our 575 plus chapter network, our state councils, our 3 offices in India, 1 in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia recently, in Dubai, we bring truth to the table at every level. and from every corner of the world. That is your SHRM. SHRM connects national and international conversations to local realities. Now, trust me, this does not mean that you will always agree with us. But what you can trust in and count on is that we're going to give you the real story. It will be rooted in facts, not fear, in data, not division, in people, not politics. This is what SHRM is built for. We will rise above the noise, the division, the distraction, like the eagle above the storm, and deliver a higher perspective, I promise you, guided by the currents of truth, of trust, and about what's right for people. So let me wrap up. I want you to really think about what you as an HR leader are going to do to lead your people through these very, very uncertain times. What will all of us do? Will we let the storms shake us, or will we rise above them? You just heard Bob Rothman, president of Gap International, who I understand is here with his lovely wife and kids. They talked about HR's moment to capture lightning in a bottle. How amazing is that concept? Gap is one of those leadership organizations building new solutions and strategies for the future workplaces SHRM is predicting. But it takes a certain attitude, a bold vision to rise above like this. And my sort of question for you is, are you up for it? We have to think newly, we have to think authentically, and we have to exit victim mode. Because I see our people, right? Our people, our employees, our CEOs are yearning for a better way. They're looking for their lightning in a bottle, and they want us, HR, to create it. And we can do that. Thank you, Gap International. That's an interesting concept, and I'm loving it. I want to see you do it. But here's what we can see from above and what we have to do. Number one, I mentioned, champion equal opportunity for all. That means confronting ignorance around dignity, rights, and empathy. We must do it, and we have to be prepared to face the backlash from all sides. That's what happens. It's not a right or left issue. I tell you, you can't win. Number two, we've got to tackle human displacement, and that means boldly rethinking how people prepare for work along with machines. Thirdly, we've got to reignite civility and trust. And that means having hard conversations, really, really uncomfortable conversations with people who may never see the world as you do. And sometimes they're around your dinner table. So listen to me carefully. To rise up, we must speak up. And I talk about a lot of courage in HR. It's one of the C's I really focus on is courage in HR. And at SHRM this past year, SHRM Talent, I think I was in Nashville or somewhere, I'm in 100 cities, I had the pleasure of walking into literally one of our members. Her name is Trisha Zulik, and I think Trisha's in the building somewhere right now. But Trisha shared an idea for her upcoming book, and the book is called The Unmuted Leader. So think about that, The Unmuted Leader. And that really stuck with me, Trisha. She said in the book that we've been muted for quite too long. And I kind of think she's right. When you say the business people, I support the business people. Hell, you are a business person. You didn't think about it that way? She said in her book, like, this is our moment to stop whispering our way through work, to stop waiting for permission to lead and do so with brilliance, to stop rehearsing courage and to start using it. She said, because our voices, they're not extra. For us, speaking up is not optional. Our employees are counting on us. It is not dangerous. Each of us just needs to remember, you are not a muted leader anymore. When you leave here, I am not a muted leader anymore. You are often the honest voice someone's been waiting to hear. Thank you, Tricia. I see you down there. Thank you so much. I needed to hear that, and I think we all needed to hear that. All right, I'm getting ready. Every storm runs its course. And when the sky's clear, what remains is possibility, pure, powerful, and full of promise. And in those moments of calm where we are right now, there's a chance to spark something really and truly extraordinary. A chance to rise, to lead, to redefine what's possible. The ascendance of every great company begins with its people. And as HR leaders, we are the lifting winds. We are the ones who turn adversity into advantage, potential into purpose. And we were built for big things. things that once felt impossible. You know, there was a time with many of our lifetimes when we were told we'd never see a bald eagle in the wild. The symbol of our nation, right, was nearly erased from the sky. Pesticides weakened their eggshells, and by the 1960s, only about 400 nesting pairs remained in the entire country. I remember being told as a child in elementary, you'll never see one of these outside of captivity. Do you remember? But thanks to the actions of a few bold individuals like biologists, field researchers, Native American tribes, and school children who raised money, and I was one of them, you and I and our children can now look up and see these majestic birds soaring across the country. Less than 20 years ago, the bald eagle was removed from the endangered species list. And you can see them in the sky every day, everywhere in the U.S., even right here, so look up. That eagle represents what groups of people committed to a goal can achieve. What we do together now will ensure our profession survives and thrives long into the future. For all of those of you who are predicting HR is going to become extinct, you are wrong. Forget about it. 50 years ago, a generation saved that bald eagle so that we could all look up and see him and experience her, I should say, in the same miraculous vision in our sky. So now, my friends, it's our turn. We have a legacy to create, so let's rise up to meet it. Thank you.